Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Chris Brown is here with me, whether watching on Twitter, Twitch, the website, or on YouTube or in podcast form later on in the day. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Wednesday. Chris, let's start here. Of the four teams that played last night, do you think that any one of them is one of the five best teams in college basketball? Because most years, if I told you that we're going to get two games, two of them are in the four teams that are Michigan State, Duke, Kansas, and Kentucky, that's at least half, or that's at least two of the five best teams in the country this early in the season, right?
Right.
Now, typically the Champions Classic is really the tip-off. Like, it's not usually a week into the season, and there haven't been feast week tournaments and that kind of thing yet. So it's a little different. But not only were these not the majority of the five best teams in the country, these weren't even the two best games of the week. We got some really great games tonight that we'll get to later. But are any of these five teams in your top five in college basketball right now?
Yeah, for me, one of them is I wrestled with this. I went back and forth. I'm not, I certainly see an argument for leaving this team to seventh or eighth or something like that. I do have Michigan State as fifth in my rankings.
Okay.
I feel like this is, we talked about some of the things that I saw that I liked out of Michigan State last night. Obviously, they're not a perfect team. They've got some real things to figure out to make themselves more efficient offensively. But I am pretty confident in this team's defense. I have to, I'm pretty confident in the Michigan State defense. I think that Aaron Henry is actually starting to progress to something more. I think he is starting to show an ability to be offensively a front man, and I think that's he's working towards it. I'm not saying he's there yet as this new level, but I'm optimistic there, and I just like the balance that we've seen offensively from this team. It's obviously, as you talked about last segment, Josh, it's very different than the Michigan State team we saw last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh Doering brought this point up yesterday. He said, he likes the balance, but at some point we need to know who's the guy. Like, there maybe needs to be the guy who can take over the game.
Right.
Of course, we saw Rocket Watts with that big game last night. I'm pretty optimistic just with the balance that we saw that'll get figured out. And I think that like I said, they're at a really good, they have that foundation between the defense, the toughness that they have. I don't think it's necessarily going to be smooth sailing for them all the time. I get that there are still things to be figured out, which leaves them clearly behind some of these other teams we're going to talk about here in our, that I have in the top three and then even fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a case for even the teams below them having maybe a smoother path. But I liked what I've seen from Michigan State. I do have them as fifth in my rankings right now.
Yeah, I think it's certainly, I'm not going to fault anybody for, even if it's an empty Cameron Indoor Stadium, anybody that can go in to Duke and beat Coach K should be considered one of the top, at least. Okay, maybe it's not that cut and dry considering what we saw happen last year at Cameron Indoor Stadium, but
Right.
The point being is that after what we saw last night and what we've seen early on from Michigan State, I can't completely disagree with that. I'm going to go with a team that I just have a little bit more faith in terms of, and I know exactly what I'm getting from this team, and that's Wisconsin. They're my fifth best team in the country right now. The Badgers, they're doing exactly what I expected them to do. They're 3-0. They haven't gotten that big test yet. They've played Eastern Illinois, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Green Bay. So the talent, certainly not the talent. The talent they've played, certainly not up to par with some of the other top five teams in the country right now. But they're top 20 at KenPom offensively, and this is a team that played, and they're fifth in defense. They're going to be a great defensive team all season. I have no doubt about that. And what I've seen in regards to the balance, what I've seen in regards to Nate Rivers and Micah Potter, who I think is the two combined are the best front court in the country. Not neither of them is the best big man in the country, but together I think they make up one of, if not the best front court in the country. Demetric Trice, Tyler Wall, Aleem Ford, Brad Davison. They have nobody averaging more than 15, but they have six guys averaging more than 7, and 8 guys averaging more than 6. So I love the balance. I love that they've been there before. This is a team that tied for the Big Ten regular season title last season. They brought pretty much everybody back, and everybody that was a part of that run at the end of the season. They won like 8 straight at the end or something like that to grab a share of the Big Ten title. I had Wisconsin I picked Wisconsin to win the Big Ten. I thought they were one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country, and they haven't given me a reason to waver from that yet. So I can't fault you for having Michigan State there, but I will keep Wisconsin there because I think there are teams that have left the top 5, and right now Wisconsin hasn't given me a reason to let Michigan State jump them, and Michigan State hasn't completely given me a reason to put them ahead of Wisconsin either. So I left Wisconsin there for the time being. Who's 4th on your list? Is Wisconsin 5th on your list? And if not, who was 5th? Or if they were the 5th team, who's number 4?
Yeah, so Wisconsin was just outside for me. That was the team I was wrestling with Michigan State.
Excuse me, Michigan State. My apologies.
No,
Michigan
you're good.
State 5.
You're good. No, it's I had Wisconsin as 6. So
okay,
yeah, I was
gotcha.
wrestling back and forth between those two, and so I went with them just outside. But I certainly see the argument that you made there. I had Illinois as 4. They are 3-0 to start the year. Of course, their first 2 wins were North Carolina A&T and Chicago State. And this was one I also wrestled with a bit as well because, their game against Ohio on Friday came down to the wire. They actually needed free throws to win it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certainly a reason that I've seen people, doing rankings of teams using sort of that as a reason to leave them a little bit below this top 5 tier. But I'm not too super. I don't feel like I want to overreact too much to that. They found a way to win regardless. They've showed that they can close out games. I think it's going to be a good learning experience for them. Again, the first 2 games, they just weren't tested at all. Dosunmu is averaging basically 26 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists through his first 3 games. They've got the reigning Big Ten freshman of the year, Kofi Cockburn, and he's off to a great start as well. This was one of these teams that for me, I was optimistic on. I was high on heading into the season, and I just I have a soft spot for them. I kind of feel I just really like this team, and I just haven't seen enough from them that I feel like given the teams that we've seen drop out of the top 5, some teams with clear concerns, it's not, there's a rationale for having Illinois lower, and I clearly see that, but I'm just overall looking at them and saying I still see some stability here that I'm not getting from some other teams. So I went with Illinois 4th. Who did you have, Josh?
I actually went with Iowa at 4th. Iowa is going to be so fun to watch. Luka Garza is averaging 33.5 and 9.5 right now. Yeah. They've won their games 103-76 and 97-67. That's great. This is still a team that I will believe they have the defense of a top 5 team when I see them have the defense of a top 5 team against a real college basketball team. No offense to Southern or North Carolina Central. They're going to be one of the most exciting offensive teams to watch all season. They're second at KenPom in adjusted offensive efficiency behind Gonzaga. That tends to happen when you have a guy averaging 34 points a game. And doing it, he's shooting like something stupid, like 80% from the field right now. I'm on the page right now. 86.2% from the field. 86.2%. That is ridiculous. He's making 12.5 of his 14.5 field goal attempts right now. Again, Southern and North Carolina Central. But still, not even like Zion Williamson wasn't shooting that well against those types of teams, and he was one of the most efficient college basketball players of all time. That's absolutely ridiculous. But even after playing those 2 teams, they're 74th in adjusted defense at KenPom, and this is a team that wasn't good defensively last season, and they brought back Jordan Bohannon, but Jordan Bohannon's pedigree comes on the offensive end. And he's not a lockdown defender. He's a 6'1", 185 guard. He's not gifted with incredible athleticism. He's not a game changer on the defensive end of the floor. So I went with Iowa fourth for that reason. And I also, and I put Illinois third because I love the fact that their best player is a guy who has the ball in his hands. I'm a big believer in the fact that your ceiling in today's basketball world, that your ceiling when your best player is an interior guy and can't create for himself and others out on the perimeter, that your ceiling is only so high. I love that Dosunmu is off to the start that he's off to. Coburn has been great, 15 points, almost 12 rebounds per game. But the issue with Illinois last season was their three-point shooting. It's so much better this season, and it's not because guys are off to a hot start. They have better three-point shooters this year, starting with Adam Miller, the freshman, the five-star, 18 points per game so far. He was 29th ranked player in the class of 2020. Right now, he's shooting 47% from the three-point line. Jacob Grandison, the transfer, not playing a ton of minutes, but he's shooting 50% from the three-point line. DeMonte Williams playing 24 minutes a game. He's shooting 66% from the three-point line. Trent Frazier shooting well. Dosunmu's shooting well. Andre Curbelo, the other freshman. They're not just shooting well because they've started off hot. They're shooting well because they have better shooters this season. And if that continues, maybe not to the clip that they're shooting something ridiculous like 47% as a team right now. That's 12th in the country. Last year they were 297th in the country in three-point shooting. Even if it returns to somewhere closer to the mean and they end up the 80th best three-point shooting team, and I don't think they'll be that low anywhere close. That's game-changing for this Illinois team. I like that they have the best 1-2 punch in the country. They have an interior stopper in Coburn. Dosunmu is great with the ball in his hands. Trent Frazier is another senior guard. I really like this Illinois team. If I could do my Big Ten rankings again with what I've seen early on, yes, the Ohio thing happened, but I also, that kind of thing happens sometimes. Right, it just does. They shot 48% from the field. They were 9 of 19 from the 3-point line. These things just happen sometimes. I don't feel too bad about that. Jason Preston had 31 points. He was 10 of 19 from 13 of 23 from the field. That's just a really great performance. So I'm not too worried about that one. I love what I've seen from them. If they really do shoot the ball that much better this season, then I like them better than Iowa at this present moment. But it's close between those two teams. But I've been a bigger Illinois fan since the preseason, and not going to waver right now. So sorry for that long-winded response, but I have Iowa 4 and Illinois 3.
Yeah, and we're right in the same area here because I just have it the other way around. I have Illinois 4 and I have Iowa right above them at third, I should say. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just sort of a matter of it was really splitting hairs on which way I went in the rankings of those two teams. I said I wasn't too worried about the Ohio situation, and I'm not. And I guess I just sort of maybe use that as a slight tiebreaker for me,
sure,
because of what Luka Garza has done. But it's really close. Like honestly, I'm more interested in is the Illinois team, like you said. It's just in terms of like I'm just more interested and invested in that team. But it's splitting hairs. I think those two teams right there in the mix. Absolutely. And I think I'm imagining we're have the same top two.
I'm gonna be really
Baylor 2.
I'm gonna be really confused if you don't have those two teams 1 and 2 right now. This was the easiest part of this list for me.
Yep.
I think Baylor's clearly the second best team in the country right now, and I think Gonzaga is clearly far and away the best team in the country right now. And that's not because Baylor has underperformed. They've won their games 86-52 and 112-82. This has nothing to do with Baylor in terms of how big this gap is for me. It has everything to do with Gonzaga. I thought Gonzaga was the best team in the country preseason. I picked them to win the national championship, which I get it. AP preseason number 1 team. I get that that's not a big statement to make. But Drew Timme and Corey Kispert, 101 points combined in the first 2 games that they played. Joel Ayayi, Andrew Nembhard. But this was my favorite team in the country heading into the season. Before Jalen Suggs, the freshman, clearly is a guy that could compete for national freshman of the year and be an All-American. Like, that's the kind of player that he can be. And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to be good, of course, number 7 player in the class of 2020. He was always going to be good. But 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists through 2 games good, I was not expecting that. And not only that, but he took over that Kansas game. So he's ready for that stage, right? It wasn't Corey Kispert, it wasn't Andrew Nembhard, it wasn't Joel Ayayi, it wasn't these guys, Corey Kispert, predicted by many to be a first-team All-American, Andrew Nembhard, a starter at Florida for his first 2 years of college, Joel Ayayi, a junior at Gonzaga. It wasn't any of them. It was the freshman, Jalen Suggs, who was getting it done, and they were all getting it done, but he was the guy who was taking over late in that Kansas game. This team was great before they had Jalen Suggs, the, one of the 5 best freshmen in college basketball, and a guy who's going to compete for an All-American spot come the end of the year. Now they have that, and they're so good. I'm so impressed by them. As for Baylor, they look exactly like what I thought they were going to look like, right? They look like a team that is bringing a lot of guys back. They look like a team that's bringing their 3-guard lineup with Jared Butler, MaCio Teague, and Davion Mitchell back. I love what I've seen from Adam Flagler, the Rice transfer. Excuse me, not Rice, Presbyterian transfer. He's shooting it incredibly well. He's currently shooting 50% from the 3-point line on 7 attempts per game. That's an even more firepower in the backcourt. I haven't been surprised by anything I've seen from Baylor. I've seen exactly what I was expecting to, which was one of the 2 best teams in the country and a team that is going to be in the national title Final Four conversation all season. But Gonzaga is the front runner and the headline, and honestly, it's been a while since I've been so convinced that there's a best team in college basketball, and it's not particularly close.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And there's certainly something to be said for in a season like we are in the midst of right now, and the teams that we've seen struggle, high-profile teams struggling out of the gate. Like, there's something to be said for both these teams just coming out, firing on all cylinders, and we've seen that from both these teams. Like you said, I agree with Baylor. It's been pretty much what we expected to see. I mean, this is a team that just makes winning plays. They take the charges. They dive to the ground, everything in between. Like, they do not give up on plays. And I've been encouraged by what we've seen from them, of course. And Gonzaga, yeah, I'm with you. I think there's just really no debate. Like, it's very clear that they are just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. I mean, you mentioned all the guys there that are impressing. When you have that, combine that front court with the back court with Jalen Suggs and what you mentioned there, it's incredible to watch. I mean, their 102 points against Kansas were the most scored by a Kansas opponent in a game that didn't go to overtime in the Bill Self era. Like, it's just when you have that many guys and they're all clicking, and you've got more than you're seeing how many guys can step up for them. It's incredible to watch. I don't really have anything else to add. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think it's really clear. If there's any, there's of course questions in the preseason. I don't think you can look now, given everything else that we've seen happen in the last week or so, and say that there are really any questions about who the number 1 team in the country is.
We're not going to see another team score more than 90 on Kansas this season. I would be shocked if anybody scores more than 90 on Kansas this season. They just put up 102. I would be shocked if anybody scores more than 85 against Kansas in a regulation game, in a non-overtime game again this season. I'd be really, really quite shocked. And they put up 102.
Yeah.
And then they went and put up a 30-point win over 23-point win over over Auburn. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens against. They play West Virginia tonight. West Virginia is one of the best defensive teams in the country. Bob Huggins is always known for that over there in Morgantown. They have an incredible front court in Derek Culver and Oscar Tshiebwe. If Drew Timme, Corey Kispert, if those guys, specifically Drew Timme, if Timme performs the way that he has been against a front court like that, I'm going to be completely sold, even more than I am right now, and I'm 99.999% sold on Gonzaga. And somebody's going to have to do something really impressive for me to consider them not the best team in the country. Coming up next, we're going to do Humor Me Please, where you're just going to have to sit and listen to us talk about what we want to talk about, hence the title of the segment, Humor Me Please. We'll do that next. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.